Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome you to the focus session on smarter buildings, better communities for everyone, an inside view on the Indian construction ecosystem and the road ahead. With uncertainties in this sector losing workmen to reverse migration, disruptions in supply chains together with the above circumstances would cause hindrance in meeting the obligations under the construction and engineering contracts, and would lead to multiple legal wrangles for the industry post lifting of the current restrictions. This session is aimed at taking a deep dive into the sector and will look to analyze the vectors changing the market and what the future deliverables in construction will look like. The discourse will cover critical points such as the importance of technology adoption in the sector and how it will impact future investments along with growth of the ecosystem. Let me quickly welcome and introduce the members of the panel. Nejeeb Khan, Country Head, Katerra. Vipul, Roongta, Managing Director and CEO, HDFC Capital Advisors. Sriram, Natarajan, Senior Director, Construction Management, Project Development Services, Cushman and Wakefield. Binani, Co-founder, Smartworks. Santhosh Kumar, Vice Chairman, Anarock Property Consultants. Nandu, Belani, MD, Belani Group. R.K. Arora, CMD, Supertech. This session will be moderated by Gaurav, Karnik, India Real Estate National Leader and Tax Partner, Ernst & Young. This session is brought to you by Katerra. Gaurav, over to you.
Thanks, Ivan. So, welcome everybody to this session, and thank you to all my fellow panelists for joining us today this afternoon. We hope to have a very exciting, insightful session. So, to start the session, my first question is to Nejeeb. With COVID pandemic and the associated crisis which has happened, how do you see construction getting disrupted? To manage the labor shocks or the supply of labor shocks and migrant labor and issues around that.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's really nice to be in this panel. We have fabulous people here to talk about our current situation. So you're absolutely correct, Gaurav. We are in an absolute mess right now. We have challenges of migrant laborers. We have a slowdown tech economy, all this stuff. But, if one thing taught us in this situation, I will say the dependence on technology is what's going to help us. And I am very, very positive about that. And you're going to see, according to me, a reverse growth. And it is simply because it is just like any other situations. We had Zoom calls and we had every video conferencing were available, but we never used to use it to the full potential. And suddenly everybody's on Zoom call, everybody's on e-meetings, right? Same thing. There's so much of technology in the construction field. It's exists, and it's been, as you know, construction. We are in the part of brick and mortar business. It's been so behind when it comes to technology. And today's, this crisis definitely giving us a new evolution. I'm going to coin a word called construction tech companies. Okay. And anytime, if we tell somebody I'm a contractor, no parents want to send your kids to be a contractor. They want to send people to engineers and doctors. And contractors always got that, okay, they're a low tech, zero, there is no vision here. When it comes to contractors and construction companies, you have that, impression. We are very technology behind companies. But you will see a construction tech focused companies coming out of it. And I'm going to give you few focus situations here, focus areas. One is, I will tell you, there's going to be a huge offsite construction, situation happening. Offsite construction meaning you have all the components built in a factory. Then you come back to the site, and in the site, it will be just installation. So you take the construction out of construction site, it's simply installation. So that is one thing going to happen. A lot of meteorology is coming, a lot of new material, because end of the day, construction is also create a lot of CO2. And, so CO2 reduction suddenly become a focus, because this crisis is a health crisis. And, today there is again a huge awareness of wellness. How do we create our air quality better? How do we create the buildings a better place to live in? So CO2 emission is a big challenge. So there's a lot of, meteorology companies will come up. And as you guys all know, 1 kg cement create 1 kg CO2. So we should look at situations where there is a huge reduction of CO2. I'm sure you will see a lot of 3D printing companies coming out. And because we don't have a time, we cannot depend on the laborers, we should look at faster construction. So you will see that technology is coming up. You will see drone technology in a very, very big way. A lot of supervision of construction. All that stuff is going to help. You will see AR and VR. A lot of AR and VR to help people to figure out how do we construct faster without problems. You will also going to see a lot of technology based of AI. When I say AI, it helps us a lot, in the coordination, which is the right material to use, right places. There's a lot of artificial intelligence going to come to the construction. So, to me, even though this crisis is really, really painful, but if you really look at the bright side, I want to start this panel discussion on a bright side. It is going to create a construction technology in a very, very positive way. Gaurav, back to you.
Thanks, Nejeeb. That's really insightful. So, Mr. Arora, we asked Nejeeb on the role of, disruption in construction and how technology would come in. In the last 3 months or nearly 3 odd months, I'm sure the issue of migrant labor is something that you've tackled with or are facing. Going forward, how are you looking to overcome that? And, what changes in construction methodology or technology would you be looking at?
Good afternoon, everybody. And we want to ask, this is a good program. And I'll tell you the issues in the construction, in the real estate. You see, a lot of workers, we are facing the problem. Because since the pandemic situation in the last 3 months, we are facing a lot of issues because all the labor has gone back. Because हम लोगों ने क्या किया during this lockdown, we were maintaining them, and we are giving them food, we are giving them security, we are giving them all health related sub facilities. But even after giving this all facilities, most of the laborer has gone back to their native place. And the few हम लोग उनसे काम करा रहे हैं, but a lot of challenges is this, to keep them proper sanitized, to keep them proper social distancing. And that's a big issues because once we are doing the construction, तो उसमें हमको काम कराना भी बहुत बड़ा challenges रहता है. And because अभी issue तो बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ रहे हैं क्योंकि most of the labor, 90% labor चली गई है. Now seeing this all circumstances, we have gone to the UP government. And we have asked them कि जो labor वापस लौट रहे हैं, the people are coming back from the other state. We have signed one MOU to keep them in our projects. So there is a win-win situation. As far as जो लोग अभी वापस आ रहे हैं, उनके लिए भी काम मिलेगा. और दूसरा ये कि जो हमारे प्रोजेक्ट अभी रुक गए हैं, at least उनको भी restart होगा. But not only the labor issues, we have the lot of other issues like material supply chain is also affected. We are not getting the material in time. So that's why this is a big challenge to restart and to come into the momentum. It will take time. And other things, you say you are talking this technology. Definitely, अभी आने वाले टाइम के अंदर लोगों का रुझान रहेगा कि वर्क फ्रॉम होम की तरफ रहे और किस तरह से घर का डिजाइन कराया जाए कि उनको घर से ही काम करना, वर्क फ्रॉम होम का जो कल्चर है, दिस विल हैव गुड डिमांड और धीरे धीरे वो डिमांड क्रिएट होगी और but we have to face the lot of changes. अगर वो demand आती है तो definitely we need some challenges like जैसे कि urban development body के अंदर हम लोग उसको कैसे FAR का issues आएंगे, density आएंगी, तो वो उन सब चीजों को लेके भी हम सरकार के पास जा रहे हैं कि अगर हम कोई बड़ा घर बनाते हैं तो उसके लिए थोड़ा FAR भी बढ़ाना पड़ेगा, तो उसके लिए हमें पॉलिसीज में अमेंडमेंट लाने पड़ेंगे. So I think after COVID we are facing the lot of issues. Not only these things, we again have to see this how the liquidity issues is also happening. क्योंकि liquidity बहुत बड़ी समस्या है कि since last 3 months nothing is happening. कोई sales नहीं है, कोई collections नहीं है. But even then we have to see that we need to fulfill our commitment with the buyers. We need to give them budgets and we need to hand over their apartment. Considering all this, we are going to the government at least give some liquidity into the system. Like I was talking, how can we come up with liquidity? You see, this every project is having the loan. सभी project के अंदर अपने loan चल रहे हैं, की repayment भी होनी है. So we have asked them at least we should get a one-time restructuring, one-time rollover.
Thank you on the financing issue. I think the question we wanted to understand on construction. I'll come back to you. Thank you. So, Mr. Belani, Mr. Nejeeb, from a construction perspective in your region, what are the challenges? What are the new technologies that you are looking to, into the system to help and tackle post-pandemic?
Good afternoon, everybody. Today, the situation we are in now is quite alarming because I think after World War II, we've seen such a situation which is post-COVID, and there's a lot of uncertainty, fear in the minds of people. So we don't know what's going to hold for the future. But overall, I think the people would definitely get back to normal, maybe 6 months, 9 months when the vaccine is out. So as far as Bengal is concerned, I think where we operate from mainly, as far as migrant laborers are concerned, it's not much of a challenge for us because there's more reverse migration from here, Jharkhand, and Nejeeb. Now, today we are flushed with workers here. As far as laborers are concerned, we don't have an issue because there's oversupply of labor. They'll be struggling in employment, the kind of development we have here. So it's only we'll have to see that they go back to where they were working. Because Bengal will not be able to employ the entire labor force that has come back here. That is one plus point for Bengal in terms of migrant laborers. But as of today, we are quite sure there's disruption in supply chain, as Mr. mentioned, huge disruption. And this would definitely take time to get back to normal. It's not that it will happen overnight. So it will take 3 to 6 months. So we've all announced delay in delivery of our projects. And the HERA, which is the equivalent of RERA law of Pan-India, has already given us extension of 9 months. As far as technology is concerned, I think technology plays a major role, has already come into real estate in construction. As far as speed of construction is concerned, in the good old days, there was not much of home loans. Today, homes are such a pressure on a home buyer that we have to deliver on time. To deliver on time, what you need is technology for fast construction. Where we were doing 7 days, we were doing 21 days a slab. Now we've gone down to 5 to 7 days a slab with technology. Technology is already there. But I think going forward, hygiene would be a major role that we need to incorporate in buildings. Hygiene and have more and more touchless kind of environment where people don't have to touch many. So people are fearful now the way this COVID has been spreading. So people are fearful of those things. So I think going forward, we'll have to change the way we live. It's a new normal we have to live. That's what I feel is going forward.
So thank you, Mr. Belani. Sriram, Nejeeb mentioned various technologies from your various clients that you work with on the construction side. So what are the new, sort of startups or new ideas in the construction world, in the prop tech world really, which you think will come in the next few months or a year in view of the pandemic?
Right, Gaurav. So according to me, given to this scenario, the current struggle is to get the labor back, and supply chain put back to the. So what's more important now is how quickly are we going to get the new normal in place, especially for the labor on the ground. Getting back labor on the ground, then equipping them and onboarding them to the new EHS rules. the environment, health, safety rules in terms of various protocols to be brought in. Right, we have now opened up a few sites across Bangalore and a couple of sites across Gurgaon, and looking to open a couple of in Pune. So all of these places, the challenge is now, how do we set a protocol? How do we do these intense day works and night works? There are a lot of coordinated works. So according to me, the earliest thing which we will be doing is to tune up the safety plan, and there's going to be definitely an increase in the cost of labor. Now, why this would happen is it's basically a lot of upkeep which is going to happen, and the on-site requirement of keeping them safe, keeping them, in terms of well-checked and, running a quarantine protocol. So there's going to be a cost towards that. And but at the same time, I'm completely with Nejeeb. The technology is another thing which intelligently we need to now. We have everything with us. We have a world of precast. We have a world of anything which is fabricated outside the project site. But then how do we sequence? So I'm completely with Nejeeb on that concept of, we do maximum work outside. And as we bring in on-site, the on-site is more like a well-organized and well-sequenced production line. So that, it's less of hands, more of mechanized environments. Even if these are going to be in situ conditions of a lot of work, concrete work happening on the ground in situ, still we need to lessen the number of hands and thereby, safeguarding people from. So that's one. And Gaurav, another important thing is a lot of procurement methodology needs to change. Efficiencies are all long-haul thing, and it's not going to have up. We do a lot of procurement, a lot of advices which have gone to people is to arrive at a model which is a long time set of material are booked. There are purchase mechanisms which are supported by advance payouts, right? So there are many ways we are advising clients to do a cost pullback. There is a likely chance of 20% increase in the labor and easily 7 to 8% in all these basic materials also, because supply chain logistic is completely jammed. So that's probably what I would say, that a mixed bag of approaches we will have. And from our end, we also make sure the supervision per se, when I say supervision, is the management protocol which we change, prioritize the works which are actually, very important, which can be done without labor, which can be. So a lot of, small bit of innovation which has to go, and we need to work with the contractor partners, the consultants, and then the client teams as well. So it's the world of now, suddenly, a lot of integration has to happen. So that's what I wanted to, share with you guys here. Yeah.
Oh, Sriram, thank you. So Vipul, coming over to you, your fund has a huge focus on affordable housing. And affordable housing obviously has to be constructed as per clockwork. You can't afford any delays. The margins are not so high and not so great, and therefore you have to make a lot of cost efficiencies. And obviously, in that sense, construction cost and construction technologies, which make the whole thing efficient, I think would play a good role or big role in making affordable housing a good opportunity. So, what are the trends that you are seeing from a construction perspective, specifically for affordable housing, and any new technologies or any new methods that you are finding in your various partners which they're adopting, and how are you helping them?
Okay, so obviously there is no doubt about the fact that efficiencies need to be created. They need to be created in the normal business cycle, all the more in the current context when things are not so good. In the context of affordable housing, yes, efficiency is in the game. But if I break it down, Gaurav, efficiency is all about time and cost as far as housing is concerned, as you rightly mentioned. Now, on the timing part, I think while technology, Nejeeb touched upon it, Sriram touched upon it, timing part is obviously essential. There is a whole lot of new technologies that are emerging. But one thing that I can say as a financer, and that I can probably say on behalf of a lot of the top developers that we have been funding, is that technology in itself is not a solution. There needs to be credibility attached to it, because all of us are dealing with something very sensitive. we cannot have a situation where something is just plonked onto the construction process in the name of technology, because ultimately the developer who is holding the risk. So that needs to be covered. And I think events like what we are going through right now over the last 3 to 4 months, I think what they will do is it will kind of institutionalize technology and get a lot more big players to adopt it, so that the overall confidence level in technology goes up from a construction perspective. Second, I don't think also that it is important to have a complete change in the way you're constructing your stuff. For example, there are multiple processes involved, and the way to go about it, how we are doing it, is that we have set up an ecosystem where we have identified project management, construction technology in terms of pure stuff being done, sustainability, and sales related technology, because ultimately cash flow is important. These are the 4 sectors that we have identified where we are bringing in players, the startups and the SME ecosystem, who can bring in efficiency in that micro segment of the construction process, rather than overhauling the entire construction thought process. And we have seen a lot of efficiencies come into that. Nejeeb talked about it in terms of AI and drone and all those things. Sometimes there is a tendency we feel, especially given the ecosystem of technology providers that generally is there, that there is a tendency to exaggerate the concept of technology, and it's very important, as I mentioned earlier, to differentiate. Third, I think technology is fine. All those things are fine, but without having a financial closure on a project, none of these things work well. And that is where the thing of time overrun comes into it. And Sriram talked about costs. And I think once you have the financial closure, which obviously will require more financing given the lack of cash flows, as Mr. Arora pointed out, this is imperative that if any kind of adoption is done by any of the developers, they have the kind of financing available to take care of a running project. And most importantly, we feel that there has to be, as we call internally, an intent on behalf of the particular developer to actually look at these things, rather than, we have seen there's generally a tendency to maintain status quo, that let it just go on, it's fine, I don't want to ruffle the feathers in terms of overall scheme of things or what has been set up. And clearly, whether it is in sales, I think out of the 4 segments that I mentioned, it is in the sales vector where things have happened maximum in terms of disruption through technology. I think that will clearly go into construction technology related to the specific project management techniques, and also in terms of purchase management. Purchase management is actually very, very simple and straightforward to do. So these are some of the ways, but let's see, a lot of things to do, and more importantly, more credibility. I think credibility is a key word that I would say is important.
Yeah, thanks, Vipul. I think credibility and intent are 2 key words out there which you mentioned. So Harsh, coming to you, you are founder of Smartworks, a co-working venture. Co-working in the new normal, how do you see that evolving? And from a design perspective, I guess, and from a space perspective, given the health regulations and social distancing norms, I would assume and imagine that you would have to, make significant design changes in the amount of space per person, etc. So your thoughts on that?
Sure. Thanks, Gaurav. Good evening to all the viewers and the esteemed panelists. Thank you for having me here. It's been a very interesting time for the co-working space industry, I would say. And, as is rightly said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And that's precisely what is happening with co-working, which is actually seen blitzscaling growth in the last 3 years, where we've literally grown by more than 5 times. And what has really happened suddenly is that obviously we are not insulated from the broader economy. there has been a significant demand contraction. And obviously, people are taking much longer to take decisions, which otherwise was happening quite rapidly. And co-working space overall, which accounts for, I would say, still a drop in the ocean. We are still about 3 to 4% of the overall commercial office estate market. But now we are starting to see a very, very strong headwind. And, the headwinds are so strong that what we were anticipating, would help us propel to about 8 to 10% of the market in the next 3 to 4 years. We can really see that happening in the next couple of years. And that's primarily because, the core of co-working space is to provide you optionality, whether it's flexibility in terms of tenure, whether it's cost savings, or just the simple aspect of you not having to invest in the capex. All of these merits are leading to a spike in inquiries, because obviously it is true that work from home has been a major trend during the lockdown phase. And obviously a lot of the technology enablers have propelled that. But if you really ask beyond the Google, Microsofts of the world, are we really ready to move towards a complete work from home? The answer would be a blended no. Obviously, there will now be a system where people on a roster-based systems will continue work from home. But India at large is still a small and medium-sized driven economy. And you're not really going to have work from home take off exponentially overnight. And what does it mean for co-working largely is that because of the merits of flexibility and because the fact that we can decentralize different office locations across, you will start seeing a lot of enterprise-led growth. And that is where Smartworks has largely been focused, in the last couple of years. We are the leaders when it comes to enterprise clients. And we are starting to see a lot of inquiries spike up from them, particularly from a business continuity point of view. And now coming to the second part of the question, which is largely around design changes. Absolutely. To be very honest, design as a concept was taken more from an aesthetic point of view until now. But now all the operators, right, co-working obviously being the smaller part of the overall real estate ecosystem, will have to start making a lot of systemic changes, which help us in the longer term. And the three primary trends that we see happening from a design point of view. So one is obviously, all my esteemed panelists have also mentioned that, and, just to reiterate, de-densification of real estate per person is going to happen. Earlier, the thumb rule was 100 square foot, which in a co-working space came down to about 50 to 60 square foot. Now we are seeing a reverse trend back. 100 square foot might still continue being the new normal because people would want design that facilitates physical distancing and social distancing. So that's one. Second is there will be an advent of using a lot of new material which is antimicrobial in nature and much more safer. And China has already led the evolution there. And we are learning a lot of that, from our investor as well, Katerra, which is a Singapore-based player with a lot of presence in China. Things like copper, antimicrobial coating, etc., which will make construction and design more expensive. But having said that, it's going to make it much more sustainable as well. And finally, we start seeing a lot of movement towards touchless technology. Things like footless sanitizers, foot pedals, essentially all of the themes which will make contactless tech work very well in buildings is something that we definitely see as a bigger change in the overall scheme of design.
Thanks, Harsh. So coming over to you, Santhosh, we've heard the remaining panelists speak about construction technologies, etc. So your clients, your tenants, or people you're selling for, what are the sort of lately, what are the demands from a design perspective that you're hearing, which is maybe different from what Harsh just mentioned on the contactlessness or the amount of space per person? Any innovative designs or any requirements that you see?
Yeah, Gaurav, thanks everyone for participating. Gaurav, what we are seeing in the demand coming from various assets classes. It's not particular to any particular assets class. On the commercial space, like Harsh mentioned, especially on the office side, what we are seeing is that demand for the large working space, especially when you're working on a desk. Because of COVID now, because of social distancing, the demand for larger workspace, larger desk space is increasing. Like Harsh mentioned earlier, it used to be around 70 square feet per person. Now it is going up to around 120 or 150 square feet per person. So there's a one change which is coming. Secondly, I think because of the social distancing, there's a huge impact on the co-working space, and the style, the working phenomenon is going to change from now onwards. Many of the people, this work from home culture is going to become a normal, especially on the office side. And that is also impacting on the residential as well as co-living space as well. These are the different assets classes. Since we are talking about the commercial office space, the huge impact is as far as the demand is concerned. What we had seen, many of the corporates are reducing their workspace just because they do feel it's going to have an economic consequences, because of which many of the companies may either reduce the space requirement, or maybe some of the hard options which has been committed by the corporates is getting either reduced or getting cancelled. These are some of the changing phenomena which we are observing on the commercial space side. But it has got the impact on other assets classes also. Like, for example, in demand, where we are in a dominant moment in the market, what we are seeing is there are requirements for the larger houses, larger bedroom houses, because the demand on the residential side is primarily coming because people wants to have their offices within the residences, in the apartment. So many of the developers are changing their design in order to cater to the demand of the customers. So one, definitely there is a requirement of office within the residential apartment. Secondly, larger corporates are wanted a space, working space in a community, which is basically like, you used to have a kind of a community living, wherein you have a residential apartment and office blocks. So people would prefer to get into those kind of an environment where people don't have to commute for longer distances. So that is another phenomena which is coming in, larger demand for a space which is in a larger community. There are like millennials, they used to stay in rented houses or co-living houses because of the social distancing, and they were staying because of their work requirement. Now work from home becoming normal, they may not prefer to stay in the co-living. Majority of the workforce have moved out of the metros and going into or getting into a peripheral geographies, or where they can have a environment which is from the your city life. So the other trend which is we are witnessing, especially on the residential side, is there's a huge demand coming from for houses which are away from the cities, which has got all the facilities and where they can really enjoy the lifestyle. So these are some of the trends which we are witnessing post-COVID. One, definitely smaller houses are not the demand. The people prefer to have a larger spaces. Secondly, they do want design to be changed. They do prefer to have a kind of an office design within the apartment. Thirdly, they do not want to commute very long. They wanted to have their houses along with the offices where they can closely work very friendly. And fourthly, there is a preferences for to have a residences which is away from the city.
Thanks, Santhosh, for that. So Nejeeb, coming back to you talked about some very fancy stuff like drone technology coming in, and newer technologies or new construction methodologies. So they sound, to a layman, they sound expensive, and that could increase your capital costs, at least from just hearing about it, because it sounds very fancy and high tech out there. So how do you look at that from an affordability perspective? If we want if you're going to use all these technologies, if they are expensive, then you will pass on the cost to the developer. So what is that you're looking at doing, or making this more affordable, or what is the pricing around all this new technology that you talked about? You're on mute, Nejeeb. You're on mute. Nejeeb, you're on mute.
Gaurav, I'm glad you asked that question because, as Vipul said, the credibility is a very important aspect. And how do you bring credibility to this technology? And the first important thing to bring credibility is bringing the cost down. Because if it's a real technology, that will bring the cost down. Okay, there is no word called fancy technology in our world, because when shared mobility came, it was a beautiful technology, and it brought the cost down, because only way it cost down is it brought efficiency in, right? So all the fancy word you heard, either being drone or VR, AR, or 3D printing, ultimately has to bring the cost down. And that is the real test of credibility, right? I mean, our challenge as a company, which is very focused on construction tech, or I'm a person very focused on construction tech, is most of the time, customers don't want the speed. Most of the time, the right word people used again, the status quo. They don't want the change because there is a disconnect between the end user and the person who's making. So if we can bridge that disconnect, that means we are making something really the customer wants. Then suddenly, the technology really help. I don't think that technology is not coming because technology is expensive. I don't think that's the right reason. The technology is not coming into construction because people really not getting that need, meaning because the end user need the speed, or there's a disconnect between the end user and whoever it's making. That's my take.
No, Nejeeb, I think that was a very forceful argument for using technology and really addressing the question around cost. So, Mr. Belani, I will come to you. Construction activity as such requires you to be on the site, and people are scared, maybe scared even at the labor cost of going and working at the site, or coming to the sites every day, or etc. How sort of concerns? I understand on your side there's no issue because the migrant vehicle is not such a big issue, but generally, how would you get them to get the confidence?
No, now initially there is a struggle in terms of getting them on site. Now people have just come back, the migrant laborers have just come back to their homes, and there's a fear factor of going on site and contracting the disease. The family is also fearful. But overall, in the long term or short to medium term, people would definitely come back to site. And on site, we've got some standard operating procedure that we've laid down for work on site. Though this will definitely slow down the work in terms of labor, because it reduces the number of laborers. They have to maintain a social distancing. And with all these factors, I think initially, if it's totally labor intensive, there are a lot of works which you cannot do with technology. There are some brickworks kind of a thing. You may want to do some precast partitions instead of brickwork. But that's again an expensive thing. You're going to do in affordable homes. Those are expensive. You have to do the conventional brickwork. So that needs skilled labor on site. So with social distancing, I think the number of laborers you can use is going to come down. So work would definitely be slow initially till the social distancing is done away with. And the other thing was, as technology, we think it's not expensive. I think technology is expensive if you don't have volumes and cash flow in your system. I think cash flow is a very important factor in our business. And sales are slow. And Mr. Vipul would know, funding in terms of a lot depends on your sales also. So if banks don't fund, banks link your funding to your sales and construction. So if sales are not there, banks don't fund. So I think funding is very important. That's very important to afford technology and to attain that speed. So I think that going forward, banks also need to rework how they fund. Instead of 2x tower, I think they should fund the entire construction and the asset is with them till we sell them. They can secure the funding there. I think these are things going forward. We'll have to evolve and work with banks. As far as funding is not, the sales are going to be slow for some time. I think you have to accept that. And banks will have to be flexible in their funding for technology so that we can afford technology and gain that speed. That's my take on this. Yeah. You're on mute.
So Vipul, a question to you. How do you see the purchasing power of the buyer real estate purchaser going forward in the COVID-19, post-COVID-19?
I see at a macro level, there is no doubt about the fact that in the short term, purchasing power will go down because people don't have confidence on what their future stream of income is, whether I'm a businessman or for that matter, a salaried person. Having said that, for all the reasons that were mentioned by the panel at various points of time in the last 45 odd minutes, I think there will be a factor which is a psychological aspect of home loans, of getting your own home, which will play up. A lot of, we talked about millennials and staying in a rented accommodation because it makes financial sense of 1% or 2% rental yield versus a mortgage rate of what was 9.5% a year back. Or for that matter, the fact that nobody wants to take a very large mortgage and tie themselves up and so on and so forth. I think a lot of those logics will go out of the window. The psychological aspect of having your own home is going to be fairly strong and I think will be a perfect counterbalance to the fact that people may not have the purchasing power. Second, very, very nice data point we came across that the number of SIPs which are being done in the stock market have not significantly reduced. Now, an SIP is also beyond a certain point in time what is my extra income and part of my savings. And we expect that what may happen is that premium housing obviously has its own, will have its own challenges, but mid and low income housing will become more essential over the next 3 to 6 months than it ever was. The key point will be supply side. So purchasing power is one aspect, but purchasing power for good quality supply should not be a problem.
Thanks, Vipul. So, Mr. Arora, you're on mute. Just so, are you focused on the affordable housing segment as such going forward? Have you started moving to that segment? And what is your wish from the government on affordable housing if that's the segment you focus on?
Yeah, Gaurav, we are definitely working on the affordable segment and doing a lot of project in NCR. Major issues, just rightly said, the credibility of the developers. Definitely, it is the जब तक हमारी deliveries commitment timely पूरे नहीं होंगे, it is a major impact on the sales and the credibility. First of all, we need to see how can we complete our ongoing projects. One is कि दो issues मैं समझता हूँ उसमें. एक है कि existing home buyers जो आज प्रॉब्लम फेस कर रहा है बिकॉज उनकी एक समस्या है दे आर नॉट मतलब उनको एक तरह से फियर आ गया है कि वेदर दे आर गोइंग टू रिड्यूस द सैलरी दे आर गोइंग टू ले ऑफ तो वो एक फियर की वजह से वो मोमेंटम अभी घट रहा है मुझे ऐसा लगता है तो एक उनको एक तरह से रिलीफ मिलना चाहिए 1 साल का मैं समझता हूँ अगर कुछ ऐसा कोई रिलीफ 1 साल का मोरेटोरियम विदाउट इंटरेस्ट उनको मिलता है नंबर 1 नंबर 2 अगर हमको न्यू सेल्स करनी है तो हाउ कैन वी इंक्रीज द न्यू सेल्स तो उसमें हमको मुझे लगता है कि जो इंटरेस्ट रेट है होम लोन का अगर वो कहीं 6.5% के बराबर आता है तो इस सेक्टर को बूस्ट मिलेगा एज फार एज जैसे यू सेड कि अफोर्डेबिलिटी इज डिपेंड ऑन द 2 aspects टुडे वन इज द लैंड एंड अदर इज द कंस्ट्रक्शन कॉस्ट As you know, the land cost is always remain in same वो बिल्कुल फिक्स हो गए हैं क्योंकि लोगों की जो अपनी कॉस्ट है लैंड की वो कम होने वाली नहीं है अभी हमको देखना है हाउ कैन वी बिल्ड द मोर एरिया ऑन द पर्टिकुलर लैंड कैसे हम बना सकते हैं उसके लिए हमको उस FAR और उसकी डेंसिटी में अमेंडमेंट लाने होंगे तभी हम लोग उसके ऊपर कुछ ज्यादा एरिया बना पाएंगे एंड वी क्रिएट द लेसर कॉस्ट ऑफ द एरिया पर स्क्वायर फीट जो हम बात करते हैं उसमें हम कम कर सकते हैं दूसरा कंस्ट्रक्शन कंस्ट्रक्शन कॉस्ट को कैसे रिड्यूस करना, जैसे सभी अभी पैनलिस्ट डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि टेक्नोलॉजी, as we are thinking, we have come up with the precast arrangement in our system, so we are doing the lot of things in the factory, क्योंकि अभी आप देख रहे हैं कि आफ्टर द पेंडेमिक साइट के ऊपर काम करना विद सोशल डिस्टेंस मेंटेन करते हुए इट इज गोइंग टू डिफिकल्ट इन द लॉन्ग रन. अभी जो सिचुएशन है कब इंप्रूवमेंट होगा. अगर हम कुछ ऐसा अरेंजमेंट करें कि फैक्ट्री से ही एलिमेंट बन के हम साइट पर ला रहे हैं, तो दिस विल क्रिएट द फास्ट अरेंजमेंट टू डिलीवरी. So we have started this. We create one precast factory in Noida, and we are doing this arrangement. And more affordability. जैसे कि like government ने अभी announcement किया है rental housing scheme. उसके ऊपर हमको focus करना चाहिए. तो उससे भी काम करते हैं, तो उससे भी affordable requirement बढ़ेगी.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. So Sriram, coming back to you, just a question. You deal with, I think, construction clients and focus on that area. So one of the demands which may come from construction or the contractors is that to bill the developer for the expenses for the last 3 months, because they've deployed the machinery, they've deployed their they're incurring costs on leasing equipment or putting equipment there. Do you see that as an issue which is happening? Do you see developers also saying force majeure and therefore we don't need to honor this contract for the time being? Your thoughts around that?
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that's been the case for the last 3 odd months since when the lockdown has happened. And what we see is, it's importantly for the BCP, which is the, business continuity plan. It's not about, it's only the contractor who has to look at it. And the developers have to. So while developers are looking at their business continuity plan, they have to include their partners. Who are the partners? The contractors, the consultants, or any other suppliers or technology providers. So an inclusive concept of business continuity is must. And this aspect of force majeure is been a convenience across various ways it can be interpreted and has been interpreted. But in the game now, everybody has a catch-up. People have honored the aspect of force majeure. There are people who have not honored. As project managers, we generally tend not commenting on what's been force majeure, and it's the take of the customer himself, and what we look at most importantly is the consequent effect of that. If it is the business continuity plan of a developer and he has to complete a project in coming 6 months, obviously there's going to be some cost contingency to make up. If somebody wants to hold the labor down south in Hyderabad, there's a large development where the developer chose to hold on around 500-600 labor with them, and they have contingentized for the cost of that. So if they are able to not pay on the idling charges of the equipment and other thing, one or the other way they have kind of been able to do that, and that's pretty intelligent way of looking at it, because the time you will take to recover and bring back all the labor, it's going to take 2 or 3 months more. And the amount of productivity that you're going to lose is going to really cost you much more. So obviously, upfront, you're contingentizing for some money, which is very important. So we have seen that happening. There are places force majeure have gone pretty hard line, and then again, the expectation on us have been to how do we do the recovery programs? How do we, block a particular time frame and do a cost to complete from that point, and pull back the budget also. So there have been different levels of expectations which we are facing, and obviously over a time only we can respond to that. We are not changing anything on the site. We are not changing the way the work is going to is being planned. Not that suddenly we are trying to introduce some changes by bringing in technology or this or other thing, But with the current gamut, whatever best we can do, very important is that how do we control recurring cost on labor? That's something which is what is going to happen. cost of labor is going to, upkeep of labor is going to definitely increase. And I'm seeing, sitting here in Mumbai, I'm seeing that's what is going to happen. Bringing back these guys, and then you're putting them into a holding camp. You're trying to, pep them up back to work, and there are new protocols happening. So to me, these 3 months where these force measures have been discussed at various quarters and various intervals, we as a company have never been, part of it, commenting on that or providing our inputs. But we have been kind of with our customers in addressing what could be done in terms of the consequent effect of that. So that's what we are doing, Gaurav.
So, thanks. So coming to you, Harsh, you obviously have expansion plans for your co-working spaces, and you will have to take large spaces and lease them out. There's obviously upfront capital cost. You have to make it as per your design. What are the sort of changes or things that you expect from the constructors or the contractors which would help you economize these costs? Because obviously there are also margins that need to be maintained.
Sure. No, so we've had a very collaborative approach pan-India wherever we've worked in the ecosystem with the developers. Until now, our plain vanilla model was to take up large independent buildings on lease. But as we go forward now, the imperative will change. One is obviously that both the constructors, developers, and co-working space operators will have to make their business models more flexible and agile, because the market demand and expectations have also changed quite significantly. So we expect more revenue sharing partnership deals where, along with the construction partners and the developers, we co-invest in that property to make that building smarter, more technology friendly, because that's the need of the hour. And what we're also seeing is one of the persistent demands that we're getting from a lot of our occupiers is on sustainability of the building. On the quality of the BMS, can it adopt to solar energy? Can we make this entire building more technology proof in future, so that in case we have to incorporate any changes, that can be done very easily. So to summarize, we see an opportunity to co-invest, partner with developers as we continue to expand, so that it doesn't end up becoming a very capex heavy model, because the model on which co-working sells is obviously making this flexible and cost effective, and you don't want to be a victim of the model where you end up being very capex heavy, right? So we'll have to innovate and look at models like that going forward.
Thanks, Harsh. So Santhosh, I have a question for you. Going forward, if you were to bet on two asset classes, what would your bet be on?
Very interesting question, Gaurav. And as if you look at today's environment, I would not like to invest in anything. But having since you raised the question, I think two assets classes which are really going strong is one, definitely on the logistics side. Warehousing is one area which has got a huge demand because of the one, supply chain management, and secondly, because of the online consumption have increased rapidly. And the second assets class is the data center. Many of the corporates are investing on data centers. This is becoming very popular, especially in India, because of the corporates' requirement on the disaster management. So these are the two assets classes where I would be betting on at this moment. But on the residential side, still I'm optimistic, because even though there's a huge shortage of household units in India, and with the current environment, I do feel the demand for residential is going to come back. And it may be, maybe 4 quarters or 6 quarters hence. But I do feel that the demand for residential will come back. And there could be possibility that, people will start investing, and there's going to be a huge demand coming in both affordable and mid segment, as Vipul mentioned. These are the three assets classes wherein, I will be betting on.
Yeah, so Vipul, I'll leave the last question to you. This is more from a financing perspective. Everyone's talked about how to make the sales happen, loans required, things required at a cheaper rate, maybe 6% is the rate. Do you think the liquidity moves by the RBI in the last 2 months addresses a lot of these concerns, or you think something else can be done more to make this more affordable and things working well?
See, the way I look at it is, without getting into nitty-gritties of what can be done, obviously, whatever is done, we as industry will always say that more can be done. There is no doubt about that. But, to talk about that point about 6%, I don't know if it has been realized, but 1 year back, the cost of a home loan was 9.5%. Today, it has already dropped to 7%. And with all the excess liquidity that exists in the ecosystem, which probably now everybody is aware of, I see no reason why there will be not enough pressure or more pressure on banks to reduce their rates. And it is competition and excess liquidity which will probably ensure that. Because let's be very clear, home loans is still one of the most secure lendings that can be done on the retail side of things. And given what is happening on the SME segment and lack of very large projects that is happening on the corporate side, this will become a big focus. And it is very, very obvious that 1% drop in home loans results in a huge amount of demand at the mid and low level. And I saw the gap is not very high between what Mr. Arora talked about and what exists today. I remember reading something on one of the public sector banks launching something at 6.8% home loan. So, a couple of weeks back. So all these kind of things will come, and the only way this will go the next 1 or 2 quarters is down, not up.
Oh, thanks, Vipul. That was very encouraging. So I would like to thank all my fellow panelists for a very insightful discussion. I hope the people who have joined this webinar have learned a lot across, construction sites, how construction technologies are, some of the new asset classes, what are the constraints each one of them are facing. And with that, I'd like to end the session and hand it back to Ivan.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. That was a very insightful session. A lot of issues were tabled, discussed threadbare. This discourse did cover critical points on the importance of technology adoption in the sector and how it will impact future investments along with growth of the ecosystem. Thank you so much for moderating the panel, Gaurav, and a big thank you to Nejeeb Khan, Vipul Roongta, Sriram, Natarajan, Harsh Binani, Santhosh, Kumar, Nandu, Belani, and R.K. Arora for participating in this panel discussion. I'm sure those who've logged in and have tuned into this webinar are leaving with some very important takeaways. This is your host, Ivan Rodrigues, signing off. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.